Hey YouTube, I wanted to talk about the concept of Axis Mundi and the mythologies of people around the world who believed in a central location. Usually it was a mountain peak which was worshipped and was believed to be the center of the world, or where heaven and earth were in union. And I'm taking this concept and I'm suggesting that rather than each culture having their own central point which they believed in, I'm going out on a limb here to say that there was a central location of the entire Earth itself, with the conglomeration of all cultures, which was all accepted. And if you've followed my research, you'll see where I'm coming here. And I wanted to form a hypothesis that this area here was the axis mundi, or central location. And so I went about to test that. And I went into some research, and I came across the claims that Egypt originally was the geographical center of the earth. And now when I say that, it refers to the land masses of the earth. So if I were to get rid of the grid here, we're talking about all the land mass from east to west. And when you take all that, add it up, and divide by 2, you'll get your central location. And so originally in the early 1900s, people claimed that Egypt was the central location of the earth. Now that we have computers, a few people actually went out to find the exact location. And in 2003, using high resolution global digital elevation model, they came up with this location here for latitude, which is Ankara, Turkey. Now, Ankara actually means anchor, and that's interesting that that would mean anchor, and be the central location of the world. However, this is the central location when you take into account both latitude and longitude measurements. So when you're going from north to south, your central location will be Ankara, and when you're going east to west, it will be Ankara. So anywhere down this particular longitude line would be considered the central point of the earth, and that comes very close through Cairo. And I decided to try and do my own research on this, and I was also curious what the measurement will come out with the incorporation of the continental shelves, in order to see the former land masses that were once above sea level, what a former location or former axis mundi could have been. And so I went through Google Earth Pro, and I started to map out all of the continents here, and I would record down the square miles and then continue on. And here I formed my hypothesis based off of my central axis point. Mainly my hypothesis was that the Ice Age civilization was going to move the central axis of Ankara, and it was going to move it right here to our intersection point. And my main reason for that was because of Sundaland Shelf, which was submerged and is now Indonesia. And I thought that increase in landmass was going to cause my axis to shift here. And so I went through and I mapped these things out and recorded the square miles for both the current land masses and ice age. And here you can see the area measurements. Here I did all of Asia, and I came down. This is the 40th degree parallel east, and that was where my cutoff point was. And I found something interesting. I found that my measurements for the ice age didn't give me what I expected. I was hoping that I was going to end up right here and end up right at my central point. But what ended up happening was I ended up almost perfectly in Egypt, and I came right through the Suez Canal right here, where we have the connection between the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. And the ancient Egyptians dug an ancient canal through to make this a connection. And that's one of the things that made their empire so strong. That's not discussed, is that they were the axis point between the east and the west. This is the sea travel that allowed this to be possible. And it's really not discussed in history. So I made up the difference here. I found the equivalent area that I was missing. And when I looked at the data, we had 28,000 or 28 million square miles to the east, while we had 32 square miles or 32 million square miles to the west, and that would be the east and west of my hypothesized central point. And so I made up that difference in areas by moving over 2,400,000, a rough estimate. Now, it may put us directly over the Nile if we were to take into account the Black Sea, the Mediterranean area here, and the Red Sea. So if we were to subtract that, and we would be able to add a little bit more landmass over here and give me the ability to say that Egypt is in fact the central location of the ancient ice age. And so that would put us back 12,000 BC. And so really the ice age is kind of a critical thing for us to understand in order for us to understand our history. And there's a few theories out there that involves pole shifting and involves the facts that when these shifts happen, it creates such climactic change that humanity has to start all over again. And we have a few interesting stories. One is the Greek story of Phaeton, who was the son of Helios and drove his chariot through the sky, but was not strong enough to keep the path of the sun. And when this happened, he burnt the land. They say he caused the deserts of Africa, and that afterwards created the deluges of Deucalion. And so when you think about what's being described here, you're seeing that the sun is going off course. And if you were to be viewing any sort of polar shift or any sort of crustal displacement, what you would see in the sky would be the sun moving out of alignment, out of course. And that's exactly what's described here in this myth of Phaeton. Um, the other story we have is from a completely other culture in China, and it's the story of Gong Gong, who was a dragon that crashed into the earth, and when this happened, it caused the skies to shift. And now mainstream wants to say this explains the tilt of the earth. However, it doesn't do that in a satisfactory way. It doesn't explain why they're saying there was a deluge afterwards, and why they're saying that the sky shifted into a certain direction when that direction wouldn't be consistent through the seasons. And so you're seeing mainstream academia do everything in their power to suggest that current scientific models are correct, and suggest that nothing extraordinary has happened, and that these people were describing something that they just couldn't understand, and which they were. They were describing something they didn't necessarily understand, but what I believe this to be was something that was known as the Clovis Comet, which there's found evidence of this Clovis Comet all over North America and parts of Europe, which hit the Earth about 12,000 BC and has left nanoparticles all over, has left iridium all over that suggests a cometary impact. And the fossil record in North America even shows that there was a huge extinction event around this time. So if this happened and this did shift our planet, that would explain this Chinese myth and how they viewed it. And while the Greeks may not have been able to see the comet, the Chinese may have. So while the Greeks just saw the shifting of the sun, the Chinese may have actually seen an impact event, then the shifting of the sky, and then they as well had the deluge. Herodotus even discusses in the histories in his second book, paragraph 142. He says in this, when he's referring to the Egyptians in time period roughly 11,000 years from when he wrote this, so we're talking about 13,000 years, he discusses in this time they said that the sun had moved 4 times from his accustomed place of rising, and where now he sets he had thence twice had his rising, and in the place from whence he now rises had twice had his setting. And in the meantime nothing in Egypt had changed from its usual state, neither that which comes from the earth, nor that which comes to them from the river, nor that which concerns diseases or deaths. Now, you've got this account here in Herodotus, and you've got additional accounts from the Greeks, the Chinese, not to mention deluge stories from all over the world. But what I found interesting in this account from the Egyptians was that they said not only did the sun shift in the sky multiple times over this period, they said that nothing really changed in their area in regards to the Nile flooding and in regards to their climate. And this is where I found the importance of the theory of the axis mundi, where we're looking at this location, this area here, being a central axis where not necessarily you have much changing when these events take place. You're not ending up in a different longitude where your climate is going to change dramatically.